I need to tell someone what I did. And you're going to think I'm terrible. But there's something about being honest in a relationship that nobody warns you about. Sometimes the truth doesn't set you free. Sometimes it hands your partner a loaded gun, and you can't complain when they pull the trigger. Everyone thinks Ryan is the one who changed, who became selfish, who stopped caring about our relationship. And technically, they're right. But what nobody knows is that I'm the one who planted the idea in his head. I'm the one who opened a door I can't close now. And the worst part, I have to sit here and smile while he does exactly what I told him he should do. But here's what makes this really complicated. If I don't tell this whole story, you'll just think I'm another girlfriend complaining about her boyfriend going through a midlife crisis at 32. You'll roll your eyes and tell me to just break up with him. But once you know what I know, once you understand what I actually said and why I said it, you'll see why I'm trapped in this nightmare of my own making. I'm going to tell you everything, including the specific words I used that night that I wish I could take back. And the part that makes me look worst, I'm saving that for later, because you need to understand who I was when I said it. And who I've become watching it all blow up in my face. 6 months ago, I was a different person. Happier, maybe, or at least more naive about what I wanted. Ryan and I had been together for 4 years, living together for 2. We had the kind of relationship people envy on paper. Stable jobs, a nice apartment in the city, weekend brunches with couple friends, a 5-year plan that included marriage and kids. I work in marketing for a pharmaceutical company. It's boring, but it pays well. Ryan's an accountant. Also boring, also pays well. We were boring together, and I thought I was fine with that. The problem started at my friend Melissa's bachelorette party in Miami. I know. Nothing good ever comes from bachelorette parties in Miami. But I genuinely thought I was just going to have a fun weekend with the girls, drink some overpriced cocktails, and come home with stories to laugh about. What I didn't expect was to feel so alive. We went to clubs I would have rolled my eyes at a few years ago. We danced with strangers. We stayed out until the sun came up. And for 3 days, I wasn't Sarah who sends client emails and meal preps on Sundays. I was just Sarah, 29 years old, in a city where nobody knew me, doing absolutely nothing responsible. There was this one night at a rooftop bar. A guy bought our group drinks. He was attractive in that generic Miami way, all white teeth, an expensive watch. We talked for maybe 20 minutes. He asked for my number. I told him I had a boyfriend, and he smiled and said, "Lucky guy," and that was it. Nothing happened. I didn't even think about doing anything. But on the flight home, I couldn't stop thinking about how good it felt to be noticed, to flirt, even harmlessly, to feel like someone who still had options, who was choosing her relationship rather than just being in it by default. When I got back to our apartment, Ryan was exactly where I'd left him, mentally, if not physically. He'd spent the weekend doing yard work at his parents' house and watching basketball. He asked if I'd had fun, in the same tone you'd ask someone if they'd had a nice dentist appointment. Polite, distant, expected. We had sex that night, and it was fine. It was always fine with Ryan. Perfectly adequate. He knew what I liked. I knew what he liked. We went through the motions. We both finished. We went to sleep. Fine. But I lay there afterward, staring at the ceiling, thinking about rooftop bars and strangers who looked at me like I was someone worth buying a drink for. And I felt this crushing weight of premature old age settling over me. I didn't say anything that night, or the next week, or the week after that. I tried to shake the feeling. I threw myself into being a better girlfriend. I planned date nights. I bought lingerie. I suggested we try new restaurants, take a weekend trip, maybe go rock climbing. or learn to salsa dance, or literally anything that would inject some life into our routine. Ryan responded to all of this with mild confusion and moderate participation. He came to the restaurants. He agreed to the weekend trip, then spent most of it on his phone, dealing with a work crisis. He looked at the rock climbing suggestion and said, "Sure, maybe," in a tone that meant absolutely not. And here's where I started to get resentful. Because I was trying. I was fighting against the slow death of our passion. And he seemed perfectly content to let it die. He didn't seem bothered by the fact that we'd become roommates who occasionally had sex. He didn't appear to notice that I'd stopped lighting up when he came home from work, or that our conversations had devolved into logistics and small talk. I started watching him more critically. The way he chewed, the way he'd wear the same 3 rotation of sweatpants all weekend, how he'd leave his toenail clippings on the bathroom counter. Small things, stupid things. But they started to build into this narrative in my head that I'd settled, that I'd chosen security over excitement, and now I was paying the price. My friend Melissa, freshly married, invited us to a dinner party. This was about 3 weeks after Miami. She and her new husband Jake had another couple there, Tom and Rachel. Tom was one of Jake's college friends, who I'd never met before. Tom was not conventionally attractive. But Tom was interesting. He'd just gotten back from 6 months in Thailand. He was a freelance photographer, which meant he was probably broke. But he had stories. He talked about taking portraits of monks and teaching English to kids in rural villages and nearly getting deported for accidentally insulting a local official. And I watched Rachel, his girlfriend, look at him with this mixture of exasperation and adoration that made my chest hurt. She'd roll her eyes when he got too animated about some story, but she was clearly proud of him, proud to be with someone who did things worth talking about. Meanwhile, Ryan's contribution to the conversation was a 10-minute explanation of changes to tax law. I drank too much wine at that dinner party. On the Uber ride home, Ryan said something about how Tom seemed irresponsible and he didn't understand how people could just run away from real life like that. And I snapped. Maybe some people don't think real life has to be boring, I said. Maybe some people want to actually live instead of just existing. Ryan looked at me like I'd slapped him. What's that supposed to mean? Nothing. Forget it. I stared out the window, already regretting opening this door. No, clearly it means something. You think our life is boring? I think, I said, choosing my words carefully through my wine fog, that we settled into being old before we actually got old. Don't you ever miss being spontaneous? Don't you ever wish you'd done more before we got together? He was quiet for a long moment. Like what? I don't know. Traveled more, dated more people, had a wild phase. I was thinking of Miami, of rooftop bars, of feeling young and free and full of possibility. I just think maybe we both grew up too fast. You want to date other people? His voice was flat, controlled. No, God, no. I'm just saying, don't you ever feel like we skipped a step? Like we went straight from college to playing house without ever really figuring out who we are as individuals? The Uber driver was definitely listening. I could see his eyes in the rearview mirror, carefully blank. Ryan didn't say anything else until we got home. Once inside, he grabbed a beer from the fridge and stood in the kitchen, looking at me like I was a stranger. I need to understand what you're actually saying, Sarah. Are you unhappy? And here's where I made my first real mistake. I should have said yes. I should have been honest about my growing dissatisfaction, about feeling trapped, about needing to either fix us or end us. Instead, I backpedaled. I'm not unhappy. I'm just thinking out loud. I went to Miami and Melissa's, all excited about her marriage, and she kept talking about how glad she was that she dated around and had her fun before settling down. And it made me think about how we've both been so responsible and straight-laced our whole lives. So you're upset you didn't sleep with more people before me? The hurt in his voice was sharp. No, Jesus, Ryan. I'm saying I wish I'd done more stupid, irresponsible things when I was younger. I wish I'd backpacked through Europe, or lived in a shitty apartment with roommates, or I don't know, gone to more concerts or something. And I hesitated, then pushed forward because the wine made me bold and stupid. And I think you probably feel the same way if you're honest with yourself. He stared at me. I don't, though. I like our life. You like it because it's safe and predictable. But don't you ever wonder what you missed? You've been in serious relationships since you were 20. You've never just been a single guy doing whatever you want without answering to anyone. Where is this coming from? I sighed, suddenly exhausted. I don't know. Forget I said anything. I'm drunk and rambling. But Ryan didn't forget. Over the next few days, he kept bringing it up in sideways comments. Is this restaurant spontaneous enough? When I suggested dinner? Sorry, I'm so boring. When he wanted to stay in instead of going to a bar with friends. A week after the dinner party, he sat me down with an unsettling level of seriousness. I've been thinking about what you said, about missing out on a wild phase. My stomach dropped. Ryan, I was just... No, you were right. He cut me off, which he almost never did. I've been thinking about it a lot. And you're right, I have been in relationships my whole adult life. I've never just been a single guy. I've never traveled alone, or made impulsive decisions, or any of that stuff. Okay, I said slowly, not sure where this was going. And I think maybe I need to. Not forever, he added quickly, seeing my face. But I think maybe we both need some time to be individuals. To figure out who we are outside of being Ryan and Sarah. The room felt too small suddenly. What are you saying? I'm saying maybe we should take a break. Not break up, he clarified. Just a break. A few months where we're free to do whatever we want, figure ourselves out, and then come back together and see if this is really what we both want. I should have said no. I should have recognized this for what it was, the beginning of the end. But here's the thing nobody tells you about relationships. Sometimes your pride is stronger than your common sense. I'd been the one complaining about missing my wild phase. I'd been the one who brought up spontaneity and adventure. If I said no now, I'd look like a hypocrite. I'd look scared. I'd look like I couldn't handle the very freedom I'd claimed to want. Plus, a small stupid part of me thought maybe this would be good. Maybe a break would reset us. Maybe absence would make the heart grow fonder, and all that bullshit. We set ground rules. Ryan would move into his friend Chris's spare room for 3 months. We'd be free to see other people, but we wouldn't talk about it with each other. We'd check in once a week to make sure we were both okay. But otherwise, we'd give each other space. At the end of 3 months, we'd reassess. He moved out that weekend. The first week was hard. I cried more than I expected. Our apartment felt too empty, too quiet. I'd reach for my phone to text him about something mundane and have to remind myself that we were on a break, that I couldn't just treat him like my boyfriend when it was convenient. But the second week, something shifted. Melissa invited me out with some work friends, and I went. I stayed out until midnight on a Tuesday. I flirted with a bartender and got a free drink. I felt that Miami feeling again, that lightness, that possibility. By week 3, I'd convinced myself this break was the best thing that could have happened to us. I went on exactly 2 dates during our break. Both were disasters in different ways. The first guy spent an hour talking about his ex-wife. The second guy was nice enough, but kissed like a washing machine and expected me to come home with him after one dinner. I realized pretty quickly that I didn't actually want to date other people. What I wanted was to feel young and free and full of potential. And I could do that without sleeping with strangers. I started taking a pottery class. I went to a music festival with Melissa. I rearranged the furniture in the apartment and bought plants and generally did all the things I'd somehow felt I couldn't do while in a relationship, even though Ryan had never actually stopped me from doing any of it. I assumed Ryan was having a similar experience, learning that dating was overrated, doing some soul-searching, maybe taking up a hobby, getting ready to come back to me with renewed appreciation for what we had. Our weekly check-ins were brief and surface level. How are you doing? Good, you? Good. Neither of us talked about seeing other people. I took that as a sign we were on the same page. I was so stupid. Month 3 arrived faster than I expected. We'd agreed to meet for dinner at the Italian place where we'd had our first date, which felt symbolic and promising. I spent hours getting ready, bought a new dress, actually styled my hair instead of throwing it in a ponytail. I got there first and waited at our table, nervous, excited energy making my leg bounce. When Ryan walked in, my first thought was that he looked different. Better somehow. He'd gotten a new haircut. He was wearing clothes I'd never seen before, actually stylish clothes instead of his usual khakis and button-downs. He looked like someone had turned up his brightness setting. He kissed my cheek when he sat down, which felt weird and formal. "You look great," I said. "Thanks, so do you." He smiled, but it didn't quite reach his eyes. We ordered wine, made small talk about work. The whole thing felt like a first date with a stranger, not a reunion with someone I'd been with for 4 years. Finally, I couldn't take it anymore. "So," I said, trying to sound casual, "I think this break was really good for me. It helped me realize a lot of things." "Yeah?" He took a sip of wine. "Like what?" "Like I don't actually want to date other people. I just wanted to feel like I had room to breathe, to do my own thing. And now I have, and I feel ready to really commit to us, to make it work better than before." I waited for him to agree, to say he felt the same way. Instead, he looked down at his wine glass. "Sarah, I need to be honest with you." My stomach dropped. I knew that tone. That was bad news tone. "I've been seeing someone," he said quietly. The restaurant was too loud suddenly. Someone was laughing at the bar. A waiter dropped a tray of glasses somewhere. The world was continuing like normal, while mine stopped. "What?" "Her name's Brooke. We met at a climbing gym." "I took your suggestion," he added with a small, sad smile. "The rock climbing thing." I couldn't breathe properly. "How long?" "About a month and a half. It's not serious yet, but—" He trailed off. "But what?" "But it could be. Sarah, this break made me realize that you were right. I never got to just be young and spontaneous and free. And now that I am, He struggled to find the words. "I really like it. I like who I am when I'm not trying to be the responsible, stable guy all the time. You can be that person with me." I heard the desperation in my voice and hated it. "We can do spontaneous things together. We can go rock climbing. We can—" "That's not what I mean." He reached across the table like he was going to take my hand, then thought better of it. "It's not about the activities. It's about being free to make decisions without considering another person. It's about staying out all night because I want to, or taking a weekend trip without planning it weeks in advance, or just being accountable only to myself." "So what are you saying?" "But I already knew. I'm saying I don't think we should get back together. Not now, maybe not ever. I'm sorry, Sarah. I really am. But you opened my eyes to something I didn't know I was missing, and I can't just close them again." I wanted to scream at him, to throw my wine in his face, to cause a scene. Instead, I just sat there, frozen, while he explained how he'd still pay his half of the rent until the lease was up in 2 months, how he'd come get the rest of his stuff next weekend, how he hoped we could be friends eventually. I made it home before I started crying. Then I didn't stop for 3 days. Melissa came over and held me while I sobbed, and told me Ryan was an asshole, that he'd used the break as an excuse to cheat, that I deserved better. But the thing was, he hadn't cheated. We'd agreed we could see other people, and I'd been the one who started this whole thing by complaining about missing my wild phase. I'd planted the seed, I'd told him he was missing out, and now he agreed with me, and I couldn't exactly be mad about it without being a hypocrite. Except I was mad. I was furious. I was heartbroken and humiliated and so angry I couldn't see straight. But I couldn't say any of it. When people asked what happened, I gave them the sanitized version. We needed different things. It was mutual. We're both doing our own thing now. I couldn't tell them the truth, that I'd basically handed my boyfriend permission to leave me, and now I had to live with it. The first month after our official breakup was survivable. I cried a lot. I stopped going to the pottery class because one of the women there kept asking about Ryan. I threw myself into work. I adopted a cat, which felt pathetically cliché, but at least gave me something to come home to. Ryan came and got his stuff. It was quick and awkward. He mentioned he'd signed a new lease with Chris, wasn't coming back. I nodded and pretended I'd expected that. The second month was when things got harder, because that's when I started seeing evidence of Ryan's new wild phase, and I had to watch it all happen from the sidelines. He'd never been big on social media when we were together. Instagram was something I did, not him. But apparently, single Ryan was very into Instagram. Suddenly his private account was full of posts. Him rock climbing with Brooke, her hand on his shoulder, both of them grinning and sweaty. Him at a music festival I would have killed to go to. Him on a spontaneous weekend trip to Portland with the crew, which apparently was a whole new friend group I'd never met. And the worst part? He looked happy. Really, genuinely happy in a way I wasn't sure I'd ever seen him. I tortured myself by looking at his Instagram every day, sometimes multiple times a day. Melissa told me to unfollow him, but I couldn't. I was addicted to the pain of it, to the constant reminder of what I'd lost. Brooke started appearing in more and more photos. She was pretty in an athletic, outdoorsy way. Blonde ponytail, bright smile. One of those people who looks good without makeup. In the photos, she was always touching him. Hand on his arm, head on his shoulder. In one particularly painful photo, she was on his back piggyback style, both of them laughing at something off camera. I started hate following her account too. She was a physical therapist. She posted a lot of inspirational quotes and workout videos and pictures of healthy meals that probably tasted like cardboard. She seemed nice, which somehow made it worse. 3 months after our breakup, Ryan posted a photo from what was clearly a party at his new apartment. The caption was just a beer emoji and good times with good people. I zoomed in on every face in that photo like a psychopath, trying to see what his new life looked like, who these people were that I'd never been part of. That same week, I ran into him at Whole Foods. Literally ran into him, my cart bumping his as I turned a corner. "Oh, Sarah." "Hi." He looked as uncomfortable as I felt. "Hi." I tried to arrange my face into something neutral. I was very aware that I was wearing leggings with a hole in the knee and hadn't washed my hair in 3 days. He was wearing another new shirt I'd never seen, looking put together and happy. "How are you?" he asked, and I could tell he meant it, which somehow made it worse. "Good, great, really good." I was overselling it. "You?" "Yeah, I'm good. Just grabbing stuff for a dinner party tonight." Of course he was having a dinner party. Old Ryan hated hosting. "You should come, actually, if you want. It's just a casual thing, and—" "No." I cut him off too quickly. "Thanks, but no, I have plans." I didn't have plans. My plans were going home to watch Netflix with my cat and probably cry into a pint of ice cream. Right, yeah, of course. He shifted his weight awkwardly. Well, it's good to see you. You really do look good. I looked like shit, and we both knew it. But I appreciated the lie. After he walked away, I abandoned my cart and left the store. I sat in my car and cried in the Whole Foods parking lot like the world's saddest cliché. That night, from the safety of my apartment, I checked Instagram and saw photos from his dinner party. Brooke was there, naturally, wearing a sundress and helping in the kitchen. The photos showed a table full of people laughing, wine glasses raised, the kind of effortlessly fun gathering that we'd never quite managed to pull off when we were together. I thought about our dinner parties, how they'd always felt like work, how I'd stress about the menu and whether we had enough chairs and if people were having a good time. Ryan had always been minimally helpful, more interested in watching whatever game was on than entertaining guests. But here he was, grinning at the head of the table, clearly the host, clearly in his element. Who was this person? And why couldn't he have been this person with me? That question haunted me. I replayed our relationship in my head constantly, looking for clues. Had I been holding him back? Had my need for stability and routine suppressed this fun, spontaneous version of him? Or had he always been capable of this and just chose not to be until I gave him permission to leave? Work became my only refuge. I took on extra projects. I stayed late. I volunteered for things I normally would have avoided. My boss noticed and praised my renewed dedication. I didn't tell her it was because going home to my empty apartment was unbearable. Melissa tried to set me up with people. A guy from her gym, her husband's coworker, a friend of a friend who was really nice and stable. That last description made me want to throw something. I didn't want stable. Stable is what got me into this mess. But I went on the dates anyway, mostly to prove to myself that I was moving on. They were all fine. The men were fine. I was fine. Everything was fine, and I wanted to scream. None of them were Ryan, which was the whole point, but also the whole problem. 4 months after the breakup, Melissa's husband Jake mentioned that Ryan had signed up for a half marathon. Ryan, who used to complain about having to park far away from restaurants. Ryan, who'd mocked my suggestion of training for a 5K when we were together, saying he'd rather die. He's really changed, huh? Jake said innocently, not realizing he was twisting the knife. Yeah, I managed. Really changed. That night, I broke my #1 rule and texted Ryan. Just something casual. Heard you're running a half marathon. That's awesome. Training going well? He responded an hour later. Hey, yeah, it's been great. Brooke convinced me to sign up with her. Turns out I like running. Who knew? Brooke convinced him. Of course she did. I'd suggested exercise and gotten shot down. She suggested it, and suddenly he was training for a half marathon. I typed and deleted about 15 different responses before settling on, "That's great. Good for you." He sent back a thumbs up emoji, and that was it. I stared at that thumbs up for an embarrassingly long time. We'd been together for 4 years. We'd talked about marriage. We'd looked at engagement rings online for fuck's sake. And now we were thumbs up emoji people. 5 months after the breakup, I was having lunch with some work friends when one of them, Jenna, started talking about her boyfriend's friend who'd just gotten back from a backpacking trip through South America. It sounds amazing, but also like so irresponsible, you know? Like he quit his job to do it. Who does that in their 30s? I thought about Tom, the photographer from Melissa's dinner party, the one who'd been in Thailand, the one whose girlfriend had looked at him with that mixture of exasperation and pride. I don't know, I said slowly. Maybe it's brave. Maybe it's good to do irresponsible things sometimes. Jenna laughed, spoken like someone who's never had to worry about a 401k. But I couldn't stop thinking about it. About how I'd looked down on spontaneity and adventure when it was other people doing it, but then resented Ryan for not being spontaneous enough. about how I'd wanted him to change, but also stay the same. About how I'd pushed him to have a wild phase and then hated him for actually having one. I'd been a hypocrite, and I was still being a hypocrite because I was mad at him for doing exactly what I'd suggested. The realization didn't make me feel better. If anything, it made things worse, because now I couldn't even be righteously angry. I could only be pathetically sad that my own advice had backfired so spectacularly. 6 months after the breakup, Ryan and I ended up at the same party. It was Jake's birthday, and I'd assumed Ryan wouldn't come since Brooke wasn't friends with Jake. I was wrong. He walked in with Brooke on his arm, and I watched Melissa's face do this complicated thing where she tried to hide her surprise and failed. "I didn't know he was bringing her," she whispered to me. "I'm so sorry. We can leave if you want." But I couldn't leave. That would make it obvious that I wasn't over him. That would give him the satisfaction of knowing he'd ruined my night. So I stayed. I pasted on a smile. I made conversation with people I barely knew. I laughed too loud at jokes that weren't funny. I pretended everything was fine, while watching Ryan introduce Brooke to people, his hand on her lower back, looking at her the way he used to look at me. At one point, I ended up in the kitchen getting a drink at the same time as them. There was no avoiding conversation. "Sarah, I've heard so much about you." Brooke extended her hand with a genuine smile. Of course she'd heard about me. Of course Ryan had told her our whole story. "All good things, I hope," I said, shaking her hand and wanting to die. "He said you guys had a really mature, mutual breakup. That's so rare. Most of my exes were disasters. Mature, mutual." I wanted to laugh, or cry, or tell her the truth, that I'd basically given her boyfriend permission to leave me, and now I had to watch him be happy with someone else, while pretending I was fine with it. "Yeah, we just wanted different things," I said instead, the sanitized version rolling off my tongue automatically. "I think it's so cool that you guys can still be friends," Brooke continued. She was being genuinely nice, which made me hate her more. "Ryan said you were the one who encouraged him to try new things. I feel like I owe you a thank you. If you hadn't pushed him out of his comfort zone, he never would have come to the climbing gym where we met." The irony was so thick, I could choke on it. "Happy to help," I managed. Ryan looked uncomfortable. "Brooke, maybe?" "What?" "I'm just saying Sarah sounds like a good person. I'm glad you two ended on good terms." She smiled at me again. So sincere, so fucking nice. I excused myself to the bathroom and locked the door. I stood there breathing carefully, trying not to cry, trying not to scream. This was my fault. All of this was my fault. I'd created this situation, and now I had to live with watching Ryan be the fun, spontaneous person I'd accused him of not being with someone else. When I came out, Melissa was waiting in the hallway. "Are you okay?" "I'm fine." "You're not fine. You're pale and you look like you're going to throw up." "I just need air." I pushed past her and went out to the balcony. Melissa followed. "Listen, I know this is hard, but you need to stop torturing yourself. Unfollow him on Instagram. Stop asking Jake about him. Stop coming to events where you know he'll be. You're not over him, and that's okay. But you need to actually deal with it instead of pretending you're fine." "I am fine," I insisted, even as my voice cracked. "You're not, and you won't be until you admit that you made a mistake, that you shouldn't have agreed to the break, that you miss him and you're mad at him and you're mad at yourself." "What good does that do?" I snapped. "I can't be mad at him. I told him to do this. I'm the one who complained about missing my wild phase. I'm the one who made him feel like he'd missed out on something. This is my fault, so I don't get to be mad." Says who? Says basic logic. Says the fact that I'd be a complete hypocrite if I blamed him for taking advice I gave him. Melissa was quiet for a moment. "You know what I think? I think you didn't actually want what you said you wanted. I think you were having a moment of panic about getting older, and you said some shit you didn't mean. And Ryan used it as an excuse to do what he'd already been thinking about doing." "What?" Come on, Sarah. You really think that one conversation made him completely change his entire personality? He was already unhappy. He was already feeling trapped. You just gave him permission to admit it. I wanted to believe her. I wanted to believe this wasn't entirely my fault. But I kept replaying that night, my words. Don't you ever feel like we skipped a step? Like we went straight from college to playing house without ever really figuring out who we are as individuals? I'd said that. Me. I'd planted the idea. And then when he'd suggested the break, I could have said no. I could have fought for us. Instead, I'd been too proud, too stubborn, too stupid to realize what I was losing until it was gone. I left the party early, claiming a headache. On the drive home, I let myself cry properly for the first time in weeks. Big, ugly sobs that made it hard to see the road. When I got home, I opened Instagram one more time. Ryan had posted a photo from the party. Him and Brooke, her arm around his waist, both of them grinning. The caption, "Life is good." 3 words that felt like a knife to the gut. I finally unfollowed him. Then I unfollowed Brooke. Then I deleted Instagram entirely because I didn't trust myself not to re-download it and torture myself some more. It didn't make me feel better, but at least I'd stopped actively making it worse. The next few weeks were marginally better. I couldn't obsessively check his social media anymore. I threw myself into my pottery class, actually started getting decent at it. I went on a few more dates that went nowhere. I adopted a second cat because why not lean into the stereotype? But I couldn't stop thinking about Brooke's words at the party. I feel like I owe you a thank you. The genuine gratitude in her voice for me pushing Ryan out of his comfort zone directly into her arms. I'd created my own worst nightmare, and I couldn't even complain about it. 7 months after the breakup, I was at my friend Casey's apartment for a girls' night when the topic of exes came up. Casey was complaining about her ex who'd started dating someone new just weeks after their breakup. He moved on so fast, like I meant nothing, like our 2 years together were just nothing to him. Everyone made sympathetic noises. Someone refilled her wine. And then Casey looked at me. At least your breakup with Ryan was mutual, right? Like you both wanted the break? All eyes turned to me. I could feel the weight of their expectation, the assumption that I'd agree, that I'd confirm the narrative I'd been telling for 7 months. And something in me snapped. No, I heard myself say. It wasn't mutual. I fucked up. The room went quiet. I told Ryan I missed having a wild phase. I complained that we'd gotten too serious too fast. I basically told him he was boring, and our life was boring, and we were missing out on being young and free. And then when he suggested we take a break so he could experience all those things I'd said he was missing, I said yes, because I was too proud to admit I didn't actually want that. I just wanted to complain. Casey's eyes were wide. Sarah. And now he's having this whole amazing wild phase with someone else, doing all the things I suggested he should do, being this fun, spontaneous person I accused him of not being. And I have to just watch it happen because I'm the one who told him to do it. I'm the one who made him feel like he was missing out. So I don't get to be mad. I don't get to complain. I just have to sit here and accept that I ruined my own relationship by trying to fix something that wasn't actually broken. The confession hung in the air. Someone's wine glass clinked against the coffee table. Melissa, who'd heard versions of this before, put her hand on my knee. Sarah, you didn't ruin anything that wasn't already. Yes, I did. I cut her off. I was happy enough. We were fine. But I got scared about getting older, and I panicked, and I picked a fight about problems we didn't actually have. And now he's genuinely happy with someone else, and my voice broke. I'm not. Casey moved to sit next to me. Okay, but you're allowed to be upset. Even if you made mistakes, you're allowed to miss him and be sad and be mad that it didn't work out. But that makes me a hypocrite. So be a hypocrite, she said simply. You're human. Humans are hypocrites sometimes. We want contradictory things. We make mistakes. We say shit we don't mean and then have to deal with the consequences. That doesn't mean you're not allowed to have feelings about it. It was the first time anyone had given me explicit permission to be mad, to be sad, to be anything other than fine and mature and okay with how things turned out. I cried then, properly, with my friends around me telling me it was okay, that I was allowed to be a mess, that I didn't have to have it all figured out. For the first time in 7 months, I let myself feel everything I'd been suppressing. The anger at Ryan for taking my stupid, wine-drunk comments so seriously. The anger at myself for saying them in the first place. The heartbreak of watching him become a better version of himself without me. The regret of not fighting harder, not being honest about what I actually wanted. That night marked a turning point, but not in the way you might think. I didn't suddenly move on or feel better or meet someone new. I just stopped pretending I was fine. I told people the truth when they asked how I was. Not great, actually. I stopped going to events where Ryan might be. I stopped trying to date before I was ready. I started therapy, which I should have done months ago. My therapist, Linda, was annoyingly good at her job. In our 3rd session, she asked me something that made me stop. Do you think Ryan actually changed? Or do you think he was always capable of being this person and just chose not to with you? I thought about it for a long time. I don't know. Both? And how does that make you feel? Like shit. Like if he was capable of being fun and spontaneous, why wasn't he that way with me? What was wrong with me that he couldn't be himself? Or, Linda said gently, what was wrong with the relationship that neither of you could be yourselves? That hit different. Because she was right. I hadn't been myself either. I'd been playing the role of responsible girlfriend, stable partner, future wife. I'd suppressed my own desires for spontaneity and adventure because that's not who I thought I was supposed to be in a serious relationship. We'd both been performing stability instead of actually being happy. So what do I do with that? I asked. You learn from it. You figure out who you actually are and what you actually want. And next time, you don't compromise on the things that matter. It sounded simple when she said it like that. 8 months after the breakup, I did something impulsive. I booked a solo trip to Portugal. Just me, 2 weeks, no plan beyond the flight and the first night's hotel. My mom thought I was crazy. My friends were worried. But I needed to do something for me. Something that proved I could be spontaneous and adventurous on my own. Not because a man was or wasn't in my life. Portugal was beautiful and terrifying and exactly what I needed. I got lost in Lisbon. I ate alone at restaurants and felt self-conscious and then stopped caring. I met other solo travelers and went to bars and stayed out too late and felt that Miami feeling again, that freedom, but this time it wasn't tangled up in dissatisfaction with my relationship. I posted photos on my new Instagram account, the one Ryan wasn't following. Pictures of tile-covered buildings and sunset beaches, and me holding a glass of wine looking genuinely happy for the first time in months. When I got back, I felt different. Not healed exactly, but less broken. Less angry at myself and at Ryan. More accepting that we'd both made mistakes, that we both wanted different things, that sometimes good relationships end, not because anyone's the villain, but because people grow in different directions. 9 months after the breakup, I ran into Ryan again. This time at a coffee shop, both of us waiting for our orders. Sarah. Hey. He looked surprised, but not uncomfortable. Hey, I was surprised too, by how little I felt. No stomach drop, no urge to cry. Just a mild sadness, like seeing a favorite shirt you donated to Goodwill on someone else. How have you been? Good, actually. I just got back from Portugal. His eyebrows went up. Portugal? Wow. Solo trip? Yeah. It was amazing. He smiled, and it looked genuine. That's really great, Sarah. I'm glad you're doing stuff like that. Me too. I meant it. We made small talk for another minute until our orders came up. As we were leaving, he touched my arm. Hey, I know things ended badly, but I want you to know I don't regret our time together. You did push me to change, and I know that wasn't fair to you, but I'm grateful for it. I hope you're not still beating yourself up about what you said that night. I looked at him, this person I'd loved for 4 years, who I'd lived with and planned a future with, and felt a strange mix of affection and distance. I'm working on it, I said honestly. He nodded. Good. You deserve to be happy, Sarah, even if it's not with me. It was a kind thing to say. Maybe too kind. Maybe it would have been easier if he'd been an asshole. If Brooke had been terrible. If I could have made them the villains in my story. But life isn't that neat. Sometimes people leave, and they're happy, and you're sad, and nobody's really to blame. Sometimes you say things you don't mean, and they have consequences you didn't expect. Sometimes you push someone to change, and they do, just not in the direction you wanted. After he left, I sat in my car for a few minutes, but I didn't cry. I just felt tired. 10 months after the breakup, I started seeing someone. His name was Alex, and he was a graphic designer I met through my pottery class. He was nice, funny, interested in me. We took things slow, which was his idea, and I appreciated it. On our 5th date, he asked me about my last relationship. We were together 4 years. It ended because I told him he should be more spontaneous and adventurous, and then he was, just with someone else. Alex laughed, then realized I wasn't joking. Shit, that's rough. Yeah, I learned a lot though. Like what? Like don't complain about problems you don't actually want solved. Like be honest about what you really want instead of playing games. Like sometimes people are in relationships for the wrong reasons, and it takes something dramatic to realize it. Heavy lessons, heavy breakup. He was quiet for a moment. Are you over him? I thought about it honestly. Mostly. Some days more than others. Is that okay? It's honest, he said. I appreciate that. Alex didn't work out long-term for other reasons, but I was proud of myself for being honest from the start. For not pretending to be over something I wasn't. For not playing a role. 11 months after the breakup, I found out through Jake that Ryan and Brooke had moved in together. There was a moment where my chest tightened, where I felt that old ache, but it passed quicker than it would have even a month before. I texted him congratulations because we were adults, and that seemed like the mature thing to do. He sent back a thanks and a smiley face, and that was that. Now, a full year after the breakup, I'm sitting in my apartment with my 2 cats, writing this all out because my therapist suggested it might help to process everything that happened. Here's what I've learned. I was wrong to complain about missing my wild phase when what I really wanted was to feel alive within my relationship. I was wrong to suggest Ryan was missing out when I was just projecting my own fears onto him. I was wrong to agree to the break when what I really wanted was to fight for us. But Ryan was wrong too. Wrong to take my one frustrated comment and use it as permission to blow up our entire life. Wrong to not communicate his own unhappiness until it was too late. Wrong to start dating Brooke while we were supposedly on a break meant to find ourselves. We were both wrong. We both made mistakes. We both wanted things we didn't say and said things we didn't mean. And the worst part, I still can't really talk about it because the narrative is set now. I'm the girlfriend who told her boyfriend to have a wild phase and then was surprised when he did. I'm the one who pushed him away. I'm the one who can't complain because I asked for this. Except I didn't ask for this. Not really. I asked for attention, for effort, for him to care enough to try to make me excited about our relationship again. Instead, he heard permission to leave, and maybe that's what he wanted to hear all along. I'll never know if the relationship could have been saved if I'd handled that night differently. If I'd said, "I'm scared we're getting boring," instead of, "Don't you wish you'd been more wild?" If I'd said, "I need more from you," instead of, "We both missed out on something." But I do know that watching Ryan have his wild phase while I had to smile and pretend I was happy for him was its own special kind of hell. A hell I partially created, but a hell nonetheless. The thing nobody tells you about being the person who voices dissatisfaction first is that you don't get to be sad when the relationship ends. You opened Pandora's box. You started the conversation. You planted the seed of doubt. So even if you didn't mean it the way it was taken, even if you wanted to fix things, not end them, you're the bad guy in your own story. I miss him sometimes. Not constantly anymore, but in moments. When something funny happens and he's the person I want to tell. When I'm assembling furniture and could use his help. When I see a couple being boring together and remember when that was us. When boring felt safe and comfortable instead of suffocating. But I don't miss him enough to reach out. I don't miss him enough to try to get him back. Because the truth is, we weren't right for each other. Maybe we were at 25, but we weren't at 30. And no amount of rock climbing or spontaneous trips would have changed that. Still, I wish I'd figured that out a different way. A way that didn't involve him finding happiness with someone else, while I had to pretend I was fine with it. A way that didn't make me the architect of my own heartbreak. And that's the thing I can't say to anyone in real life. The thing that makes me look terrible and petty and jealous. I'm not happy for him. I'm not glad he found someone better suited to this new version of himself. I'm not grateful that my words pushed him to become a better person. I'm bitter. I'm resentful. I'm still, even now, a little heartbroken. But I can't say that out loud because I told him to do this. I gave him permission. I opened the door and I can't complain when he walked through it. So I smile when people ask about him. I say we wanted different things. I pretend the breakup was mutual and mature and fine. I lie to everyone, including sometimes myself, about how okay I am with all of this. Because what's the alternative? Admit that I made a huge mistake, and now I have to live with watching my ex-boyfriend thrive without me. Admit that I'm jealous of his girlfriend and angry at him for taking my advice, and furious at myself for giving it. That makes me the villain. That makes me the bitter ex who can't move on. That makes me pathetic. So I keep it to myself. I write it in therapy journals and anonymous Reddit posts and long rambling documents on my laptop that no one will ever read. I told him I missed my wild phase. Now he's having one and I can't say anything about it. And that's my punishment for not knowing what I really wanted until it was too late.